85 active cases having been reported. The number of new COVID-19 cases continue to decrease, with 361 cases having been recorded compared to the 437 which were recorded last week, and this marks a 17% decline. While the country is doing very well in its response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Cabinet nonetheless calls upon citizens to remain vigilant and strictly observe the National and World Health Organization COVID-19 protocols and the relevant regulations, which we should continue to be strictly adhering to them. Furthermore, there is need to closely monitor the situation in schools for the coming few weeks before allowing the resumption of sporting activities in these institutions, given that the reopening of schools and onset of winter is usually associated with increased cases. Regarding the national vaccination program, Cabinet wishes to inform the nation that as of 9 May 2022, which is yesterday, a total of 5,924,932 first doses of the COVID-19 vaccine had been administered, while 3,869,126 people had received their second dose. And as for the third dose, we have 647,049. This translates to a national coverage of 53%, up from the 52% which was recorded last week. Cabinet calls upon all citizens that have not been vaccinated to present themselves for vaccination at centers which are nearest to them. All provinces will now ramp up vaccination under the phase 2 vaccination campaign blitz by working closely with community leaders. Then we moved on to the proposed partnership between Dinson Iron and Steel Company, DISCO, and then this is between DISCO and the Zimbabwe Electricity Transmission and Distribution Company, ZETDC. The Minister of Finance and Economic Development, Honorable Professor Mthuli Ncube, presented the proposed partnership between Dinson Iron and Steel Company Private Limited and the Zimbabwe Electricity Transmission and Distribution Company, ZETDC, for the construction of a 330 kilovolt, 100 kilometer electricity line from Sherwood, that's Kwekwe, to Manize, Chivu, and this was approved by Cabinet. Cabinet would like to highlight that Dinson Iron and Steel Company, DISCO Private Limited, is setting up a greenfield integrated iron and steel plant alongside mining of iron in the Chivu district of Mashonaland East Province and Rumanzi district of the Midlands Province. The US 750 million investment will significantly contribute to the country's economic growth. DISCO has accordingly applied to be connected to the national electricity grid in order to access the requisite power for its plant operations. The electricity transmission line will stretch from the Kwekwe Sherwood substation to DISCO's iron and steel manufacturing plant at Manize in Chivu. To finance this connection, ZETDC will enter into a public-private partnership, that's PPP, agreement whereby DISCO will pre-finance both phases of the construction project as a loan to the utility company. The loan will be recovered from ZETDC through deductions from DISCO's monthly bills until the loan is paid up over an estimated 5-year period. Cabinet invites the public to note that this electricity line will not only be dedicated to DISCO, but will also be available to other ZETDC customers along the way. In terms of the PPP, the utility will use 40% of the electricity. And during phase 1 of the project, DISCO will require only a fraction of its 60% allocation, leaving the rest available to ZETDC. The partnership will therefore allow DISCO to access a reliable and regular supply of power from ZETDC for their iron mining and processing operations on time. In the process, local communities will also benefit by receiving consistent power supplies. Other benefits of the Powerline project include the following. One, that ZETDC will have an asset on its balance sheet immediately after commissioning. Then two, that direct employment of about 300 skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled jobs will be created during the construction phase of the project, with at least 80% of the general labor force coming from the local communities. Three, that the country's power transmission capability will be augmented and reinforced. And finally, four, the construction of the power line will capacitate Zimbabwe to substantially contribute to the regional Southern African Power Pool, SAP, which facilitates trade in power across Southern Africa, thereby significantly increasing the country's revenue flows. Then Cabinet received an update on the localization of the fertilizer value chain. Cabinet received an update on the localization of fertilizer value chain as presented by the Minister of Industry and Commerce, Honorable Dr. Sekai Nzenza. Cabinet wishes to inform the nation that the local fertilizer industry is accelerating the implementation of the 5-year fertilizer import substitution roadmap 2020 to 2024. The objective is to increase local production of phosphates and ammonium nitrate, and this is being done in order to reduce fertilizer imports. To this end, the Industrial Development Corporation of Zimbabwe, IDC, has invested into the local fertilizer value chain from extraction of phosphates to the granulation of basal fertilizers. The company is modernizing operations at its subsidiaries, that is at Doroa Minerals and Zimphos, in order to increase production. Meanwhile, Sebo Chemical has secured a loan from Afreximbank for the refurbishment of its plant and equipment, as well as purchasing rail tank cars. Sebo Chemical's target is to produce 120,000 metric tons of ammonium nitrate for the 2022-2023 farming season. Cabinet notes that the fertilizer production sector plays a critical role in ensuring successful agricultural production, which is the bedrock of our economy. Government is thus looking at ways of recapitalizing the sector, including through listing on the stock exchange, in order to attract suitable investors. Presently, annual national demand of fertilizers stands at 350,000 metric tons of phosphates and 250,000 metric tons of ammonium nitrate. Although the local fertilizer industry is currently operating at 30% of its capacity utilization, indications are that local production is increasing, leading to the reduction of imports. Then regarding the 2022 winter cropping season, Cabinet wishes to inform the nation that the local fertilizer industry has adequate stocks to supply the existing winter input programs, as well as other commercial and retail needs. The available fertilizer includes carryover stock from the previous season and stocks under the Collateral Management Arrangement, CMA. And these will be released once the required funding has been disbursed. Then Cabinet moved on to receive a progress reports on priority projects for the first 100-day cycle of 2022. Cabinet received reports on progress made in the implementation of priority projects for the first 100-day cycle of 2022, as presented by the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Primary and Secondary Education, Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare, and Minister of State for Presidential Affairs and Monitoring Implementation of Government Programs. The Minister of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare, Professor Mavima, reported that the progress recorded for projects under his purview are as follows. First, the Migrant Resource Center, which was established to empower potential migrants to make informed decisions that affect their mobility, will be launched soon. And two, 252 children living on the streets of Bulawayo, Harare, Mutare, and Masvingo were identified, with some placed in safe places, while others were reunited with their families. And three, The project on mapping of supplies for assistive devices for persons with disabilities in all provinces was successfully carried out. And finally, under nutritional gardens, 8 boreholes were drilled in the informal sectors of Harare, Bulawayo, Bindura, and Chivu. In Cholocho, 1 borehole was drilled and 2 fencing perimeters for 2 nutritional gardens were erected for the sustainable livelihood of the San communities. Then we move on to the report from the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education, Dr. Evelyn Glovu, who reported progress on projects under her purview as follows. 1. 44 schools were registered nationwide, including ECD centers, primary and secondary schools, and 1 independent college. Then secondly, the upgrading on infrastructure is ongoing at 80 schools, and this includes those destroyed by Cyclone Idai. 3 learner modules continue to be developed, and 2 e-libraries were established in each of the 7 provinces as strategies to ensure continued learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. And finally, interactive radio lessons covering curriculum content as well as offering guidance and counseling to students were introduced. Then we received a report from the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Dr. Shawa, who reported that the following progress had been recorded on the projects also under his purview. First, participation at the Dubai Expo and the Zimbabwe National Day, leading to the successful promotion of Zimbabwe as an excellent investment destination and signing of a number of memoranda of understanding with potential investors. Then a binational commission was convened with Botswana in Victoria Falls, leading to the signing of 5 agreements. Thirdly, participation at the 6th Africa Union, European Union Summit in Brussels, where His Excellency, the President Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, invited European investors to consider investing in all sectors of the Zimbabwean economy. And we then got a report from the Minister of State for Presidential Affairs and Monitoring Implementation of Government Programs, that's Honorable Dr. Joram Gumbo. He reported on progress recorded under the District Development Fund, DDF, and the report is as follows. 3 bridges at Gunguwe in Gokwe North, Somgolo Rupane, and Musukwe in Urungwe are under construction, and they are all at different levels of completion. In addition, pipe drifts at Gonde, Matabeleland South, and Ngomahuru in Masvingo are work in progress and will be completed by the end of the cycle. Under road maintenance, Siawarewa Chenaka in Masvingo and Bebesanwa Marimuna in Matabeleland South, these are roads which have been completed. While Binga, Siakovu, that's another road, Nyakaskana, Masango, Karanda in Mount Darwin, and Mount Casino in Marondera are all at different stages of completion. As for the procurement of materials for rehabilitation spillways of Nyamawanga Dam in Jimba and Chantali, that is ongoing. Then on the rehabilitation of canals at Chigondo scheme in Wedza, it is progressing quite well. Just to report that 2 piped water schemes were constructed and completed at Chichida, that's in Wedza, and Nyamakovu in Cholocho. About 1,188 boreholes out of the targeted 1,400 have been maintained, and 8 staff houses are under construction at Nanyuka Primary School, that's in Gokwe North. Honorable Joram Gumbo also presented an overview of progress made on projects under the Ministry of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, and he did this on behalf of Honorable Ziambi, including, he reported many projects, including agricultural projects on prison farms, construction of 17 blocks of houses, Kurubi Maximum Dog Training School, and Ganyu Staff Housing Project, decentralization of the Legal Aid Directorate, LAD, to district level, and also construction of the Lupane, Gwanda, Cherezi, and Epwe new magistrate court complexes. Then we move on to the report on the Electricity Amendment Bill 2022. Cabinet considered and approved the Electricity Amendment Bill 2022, and this report was presented by the Attorney General, Honorable Prince Machaya, on behalf of the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. This bill introduces stiffer penalties for the abstraction or diversion of electricity or the use of such electricity, knowing that it was illegally abstracted or diverted. The bill will also remove the option of a fine where one is convicted of a crime. Furthermore, the bill introduces stiffer penalties for the transportation of material used in connection with the generation, transmission, distribution, or supply of electricity without the option of a fine. ZESA is suffering huge losses due to theft and vandalism of the national electricity infrastructure. In 2021, ZESA recorded 1,237 cases of theft and vandalism, resulting in huge losses of the revenue, which could have been used for development. The amendment bill will deter would-be offenders through stiffer and mandatory sentences. Then Cabinet received a report on the Memorandum of Understanding between the Republic of Zimbabwe and South Africa in the field of basic education. The Attorney General, Honorable Prince Machaya, again presented the Memorandum of Understanding between the Republics of Zimbabwe and South Africa in the field of basic education, and this report was adopted by Cabinet. The MOU will foster cooperation between the two parties in the following areas, among others. 1, exchange of delegations, experts, and academics in the field of primary and secondary education. 2, learner enrollment and teacher training, whereby the parties shall, upon request, facilitate the mutual enrollment of learners in their respective secondary schools. And 3, exchange of information and participation in educational conferences, which will be organized by the parties. Then 4, promoting the cooperation of learning institutions and high commissions of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, that's UNESCO, in these respective parties' countries. Then 5, sharing information on schools' infrastructure development, teacher development, curriculum development, and in assessments and examinations. Then Cabinet received a report on the African Medicines Agency, AMA assessment visit, which was done from the 19th to the 23rd April 2022. Cabinet was briefed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Frederick Makamuri-Shawa, on the African Medicines Agency AMA assessment team visit, as I said, which was held on the 19th to the 23rd April. Cabinet adopted this report. The nation is informed that the assessment team sought to evaluate Zimbabwe's bid to host the AMA headquarters, as well as to inspect the relevant facilities. The AMA delegation was led by Professor Agri John Douglas Ambali from the African Union Development Agency, AUDA, while the Zimbabwean team was led by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Shawa. Zimbabwe had submitted its bid to host AMA headquarters in July 2021. The team embarked on verification visits of all sites being offered by Zimbabwe in its bid to host the headquarters. The sites which were visited are as follows: Celestial Office Part to host the AMA Secretariat offices and laboratory. Then Mount Hamden for the construction of the permanent AMA Secretariat and laboratory. Parenyatwa Group of Hospitals for AMA's team to appreciate the facilities of a public referral hospital. The proposed residence of the AMA Director General at Borodobru. Hotel facilities to determine the suitability and availability of the facilities. The Harare International Conference Center, that's HICC, to evaluate conferencing facilities which we have. Then the Borodoro Police and Greendale Fire Brigade, and also Robert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport to assess the aviation ground services and CEVA logistics cold chain supply facilities. Then Cabinet received a report on the ongoing government interventions to improve the urban area public transport system. Cabinet was briefed by the Minister of Local Government and Public Works, Honorable July Moyo, on the urban areas public transport system. Following His Excellency, the President, Comrade P.D. Mnangagwa's statement on opening up of the public transportation sector to private players. Government is in the process of coming up with relevant regulations to enable liberalization of the public transport sector. These will include the licensing of operators on any given route. The regulations will go a long way in alleviating the plight of urban commuters. Government takes this opportunity to assure citizens that it has the travelling public's interest at heart and will expend all efforts to ensure that the situation is expeditiously ameliorated. The nation will be kept abreast of developments on this matter. Once again, I want to thank you, and that brings us to the end of today's post-cabinet briefing. I give it back to Chief Secretary for questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for a lucid and comprehensive briefing to the members of the media. Now it's time for members of the media to pose questions on the salient points that came out of today's cabinet. As usual, we have two sessions. The first session, where we'll be getting volunteers, at most 3, and then in the second round, depending on what will have happened initially. So without much ado, I get back to the Honorable Minister.
We need the questions now.
Yeah.